always from the heart of the city, and now on demand 24/7 on the CHFI website. This is the soundtrack to accompany a study in fear. And I'm Don Jackson, around the world on the internet. This is an excerpt from The 10 Commandments for a Long and Peaceful Life by Dear Abby, some years back. Thou shalt not be fearful, for most of the things we fear never come to pass. Some wise words to consider this hour on the subject of fear as we approach Halloween. With Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Annie Lennox and Why, and Simply Red, Holding Back the Years. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. The ghost looked me in the eyes on a night in November. I woke up at about 2 a.m. in my bedroom, with its wallpaper bearing the images of sheet music and party horns. I wasn't sure why I'd woken. Raindrops ticked against my window pane. Steam hissed from the old radiator in the corner. Sausage raised her head and growled. I got up. Slowly, tentatively, I opened my door and peeked into the hallway. There was nothing there. Above my head was the trap door to the attic. The hair on Sausage's back was standing straight up. The door in the bathroom was open. I saw my own reflection as I drew near. Just as I reached out to touch the doorknob, I saw that there was someone behind me in the mirror. An older woman with long blonde hair, wearing a white garment like a nightgown. Her eyes were a pair of small red stars. She seemed surprised to see me and raised one hand to her mouth as if I were a ghost, as if I were the one floating translucently in the mirror. I stayed where I was for a moment, frozen, my heart pounding. Who was this woman, I wondered? What did she want? She'd worn a curious, regretful expression, as if she wanted to warn me that something terrible was just about to happen to our family, but being translucent was powerless to stop it. Unquote. An excerpt from I'm Looking Through You, Growing Up Haunted, a memoir by Jennifer Finney Boylan. This hour, another study in fear with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com.
For this moment to arise.
The Beatles with Blackbird and RyanDan with The Face. Another program of Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com as we approach Halloween '09. Henrik Ibsen, in Act 1 of Ghosts, wrote, I am half inclined to think we are all ghosts, Mr. Manders. It is not only what we have inherited from our fathers that exists again in us, but all sorts of old dead ideas and all kinds of old dead beliefs and things of that kind. They're not actually alive in us, but they are dormant all the same, and we can never be rid of them. Whenever I take up a newspaper and read it, I fancy I see ghosts creeping between the lines. There must be ghosts all over the world. They must be as countless as grains of the sand, it seems to me. And we are so miserably afraid of the light, all of us. That reminded me of this. It was written by Mabel Drew in the Week Standard magazine published in Kingston, Ontario. She says that she was ashamed of being afraid of the dark if she had taken the trouble to find out that others had the same fear. Maybe they could have conquered it together, that the dark was only half as fearsome as we thought it was. She recounts one story that gives us all hope that fears can be overcome, as long as we have someone to lend a helping hand, and I quote, "I remember a story told by an elderly Quaker woman, Sister Elliot, about a little boy who, on being sent by his parents to bed, stood at the foot of the stairs, looking up into the ominous shadows. His sister, only a year older than he, took him by the hand and began to draw him towards that upper darkness. 'Let's be afraid together,' she said. And suddenly, he felt brave and able to go on." Unquote. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote, "We need to teach the next generation of children from day one that they are responsible for their lives. Mankind's greatest gift, also its greatest curse, is that we have free choice. We can make our choices built from love or from fear." Unquote. I'm Don Jackson from iTunes and CHFI.com. Burton Cummings and I'm Scared, Cat Stevens, Oh Very Young, and Benny King and Stand By Me. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. This appeared in the 1977 edition of the Friendship Book of Francis Gay, published by D.C. Thompson and Company. Gay writes, and I quote, "King Alexander the Great was known for his knowledge and love of horses. On one occasion, seeing a friend having difficulty controlling a frightened horse, he told him, 'Turn its head to the sun.' The rider did so, and the horse immediately became quiet and calm. 'You see,' said Alexander, 'it was frightened by its own dancing shadow.' Often we, too, may be frightened by the shadow of our own fears. By turning towards the sun, we can put the shadows behind us." Unquote. It was Helen Keller who believed avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. The fearful are caught as often as the bold. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. CHFI.com. A good woman does not live in fear of the future because of her past. Instead, she understands that her life experiences are merely lessons meant to bring her closer to self-knowledge and unconditional self-love. An excerpt from something called How to Recognize a Good Woman. Its author, unknown. And this excerpt from A Strong Woman versus a Woman of Strength. A strong woman isn't afraid of anything, but a woman of strength shows courage in the midst of her fear. And Robert J. Hastings in The Station wrote, "It isn't the burdens of today that drive men mad. Rather, it is regret over yesterday or fear of tomorrow. Regret and fear are twin thieves who would rob us of today." And James Thurber wrote, "Let us not look back in anger or forward in fear, but around in awareness." Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Eva Avila, Meant to Fly, and Josh Groban, and You Are Loved. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. I'm Don Jackson. You are strong when you take your grief and teach it to smile. You are brave when you overcome your fear and help others to do the same. An excerpt from an anonymous writing on the internet. And finally, this hour, some excerpts from the scripts of the CBS television hit series, Touched by an Angel, called When an Angel Speaks. Compiled by executive producer Martha Williamson, a fireside book published some years back by Simon & Schuster. And I quote, "Fear is never harmless. It destroys from the inside. When there's that much pain, you gotta ask yourself if it's really love. People hold on to each other for lots of reasons they can't understand, and they call it love. But it's really fear. Love erases fear." Unquote. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.